there's traditional pumpkin pie, pumpkin bread, but nothing is better than a pumpkin cookie. This is a great recipe to make any time of year, just to remind you of fall. Today we're making my chewy oatmeal pumpkin chocolate chip cookies, one of my favorite cookies during the fall. I'm gonna start with 1 cup of melted butter. You can melt it in the microwave or you can melt it on the stovetop, it doesn't matter. I'm gonna add 3/4 cup of brown sugar. You can use light brown or dark brown, just make sure you pack it into the measuring cup. We're gonna add 1/2 cup of granulated sugar. Give it a light whisk. Make sure the sugar and butter is completely combined, that there's no brown sugar lumps. I like to use a little more brown sugar than white sugar in my oatmeal cookies. It ensures a nice chewy cookie. What's great about pumpkin chocolate chip cookies is that it's not a typical pumpkin pie or pumpkin bread. It's just a little more special. They're really soft, they're really chewy from those oats, and they're deliciously comforting. It's just like regular chocolate chip cookies, throw some oats in there for extra texture, and of course pumpkin for great fall flavor. Once the butter and the sugars are completely combined, we're gonna add the rest of our wet ingredients. My secret ingredient is a little bit of maple syrup. It just adds this wonderful, delicious, nice fall flavor to the cookies. 3 tablespoons. 2 teaspoons of pure vanilla extract. And another little secret I have is to add an egg yolk. Not a full egg, just an egg yolk. What a lot of people don't know is that pumpkin can actually replace eggs in baked goods. And when I was testing this recipe, I found that I still needed a little extra moisture, so I kept an egg yolk in. Leave out the egg white. The pumpkin will do all the magic. If anything were to go wrong in this recipe, it's that you didn't take the time to blot the pumpkin puree before you added it to the cookie dough. You'll be surprised how much moisture and wetness will come out of that pumpkin, and you don't want that in your cookie dough, or else you'll end up with pumpkin cake. So to keep it dense, always blot that pumpkin. Taking an extra 10 seconds to do this will help guarantee a nice chewy cookie. So I just take a paper towel and I stick it in the bottom of the bowl. I put 3/4 cup of pumpkin on top, and I just blot it lightly with a paper towel. This is all moisture that would be in your cookie dough that would create a cakey cookie. We want a nice chewy cookie. That's good. And we can just add that drier pumpkin right into the cookie dough. Give everything a nice whisk together until all is combined. When I was approached to write a cookbook, I was still working full time. I had this growing love of food photography, and I had a lot of wonderful, dedicated readers that motivated me to just keep going and keep working harder and post more recipes. And so I was contacted to write a cookbook. So I quit my job. That summer I wrote my book. My book came out a year later, and I haven't turned back. I have a really wonderful editor. I've worked with her with all 3 of my books, so she kind of guided me along in the cookbook writing process. But it was really weird to wake up that first Monday morning and not go into an office and just kind of blog. The wet ingredients are great. They smell so good. We can start on the dry ingredients. So in this bowl, I have 2 cups plus an extra tablespoon of all-purpose flour. In my recipe testing, 2 cups of flour wasn't quite enough, and 2 cups plus a 1/4 cup was too much. So I just settled with 2 cups plus an extra tablespoon, the perfect amount. We'll also add some baking soda. You'll need 1 teaspoon. It's gonna give the cookies a nice rise. We'll use 1/2 teaspoon of salt just to offset all the sweetness. And we have 2 teaspoons of ground cinnamon and 2 teaspoons of pumpkin pie spice. Those are all the dry ingredients we'll need. Just toss them together. I add pumpkin pie spice to the cookie dough. If you don't have pumpkin pie spice, that's completely fine. Just add a blend of different fall spices like a little extra cinnamon, nutmeg, ground cloves, and ginger. Once all of your dry ingredients are incorporated, grab your wet ingredients. Now the mixture is gonna be really thick, so just do your best to get it all into the dry ingredients. The cookie dough smells so good already, and the cookies aren't even baked. Give the cookie dough a nice mix together by hand. The great thing about this recipe, you don't need to break out your hand mixer. You're not creaming butter and sugar together. Everything can be mixed right by hand. I love easy cookie recipes like that. Once the wet and dry ingredients are totally combined, we're gonna add some oats for a nice chewy texture. If you can't tell, chewy is the theme of today. We want a nice chewy pumpkin cookie. This dough gets really heavy. You're gonna use some arm muscle. Once the wet and dry ingredients are totally combined, we're gonna add 1.5 cups of whole rolled oats and 1.5 cups of chocolate chips. I like to save a couple just on the side and put them into the baked cookies just for extra looks when I'm finished. There's no shortage of chocolate chips in this pumpkin cookie recipe. There's plenty of melty chocolate goodness in each bite. Make sure that you use whole oats in this recipe compared to like quick oats or instant oats. You really want those whole oats for a lot of chewy texture. Give everything a nice mix together by hand. This is coming together beautifully. It smells so good. The mixture is really thick. One of my favorite things about these chewy pumpkin oatmeal chocolate chip cookies is that you don't need to chill the cookie dough. The dough is pretty sturdy. It doesn't need time in the refrigerator before you bake the cookies. All right, this looks great. Just grab a cookie sheet, line it with a silicone baking mat or parchment paper, whichever you prefer. I like to use a cookie scoop when I'm working with oatmeal cookie dough. It's a really sticky and thick dough, and a cookie scoop just makes things really easy. There's 1.5 tablespoons of cookie dough per cookie. What I love about this cookie dough is it's really versatile. If you don't like pumpkin and chocolate together, you can use white chocolate chips instead. You can use dried cranberries instead, some chopped nuts instead of chocolate chips. Any add-ins that you love with pumpkin goes. You want to place the cookie dough about 3 inches apart on the cookie sheet. As my life has gone through changes, I want my blog to kind of have a fresh, beautiful new start. It's kind of matured and grown along with me. So I thought it's a great time for a nice little revamp. And still very much, my brand, but a little bit of a facelift, if you will. What I really love is there's specific sections for all of my baking traditions. But up until now, there's never really been like an easy place to find all of these different categories on my blog. So I wanted a specific place for all of the baking traditions. Every holiday season, it's all about cookies, and I call it Cookie Palooza, and it's 10 cookie recipes in a row, and we count down to Christmas. I started it in 2013, and I post 10 completely different recipes, making sure that I hit all of the flavor notes, from sprinkles to molasses to traditional to sugar cookies to red velvet to chocolate to peanut butter. And that's a lot harder than it sounds, to make sure that you have a flavor that hits everyone's taste buds. Another tip for you is, before you bake the cookies, I always like to just slightly press them down with my fingers. The cookies will flatten a little bit in the oven, but they won't flatten out enough. So I always like to give them a little head start. Just flatten them out gently. My oven is preheated to 350. These will take about 12 to 13 minutes. All right, these look great. I'm gonna pop them in the oven. When the cookies are baking, you smell all of those pumpkin pie spices. So even if it's not fall just yet, it will certainly smell like fall in your kitchen. Autumn is just such a beautiful time of year. The leaves are changing colors. It's cool outside. The leaves crunch under your shoes when you walk. It's just a beautiful season of change. These cookies look great. They're right out of the oven. I love them when the chocolate is still a little melty. This is a perfect recipe for fall, and I know that you're gonna love them. This cookie has a little bit of everything for everybody. They're not overly sweet or overly spiced or too chewy or too soft. It just hits all of the right notes. There's a lot of people who may not even like pumpkin, but with one taste of this cookie, you'll be easily converted.